The ship landed on the Valarian homeworld just as the twin suns began to set. Kang Taeho stood at the window and watched the golden light wash over the crystal towers of the capital city. Everything here was tall and beautiful and strange. The buildings reached toward the sky like frozen music. The air itself seemed to glow with soft purple light. Taeho had seen many alien worlds in his years as a mercenary. But this one made him feel small in a way the others had not. A message appeared on his communicator. Report to the Royal Palace, main entrance. Do not be late. He gathered his single bag and walked down the ship's ramp. The Valarian port workers stopped to stare at him. They were tall beings, almost 7 feet, with silver-white skin that shimmered like moonlight. Their eyes were deep violet, and they moved with a grace that made Taeho feel clumsy just by standing still. One of them whispered something to another. Taeho caught the word, human, spoken like a curse. He kept walking. The journey to the palace took 30 minutes by hover transport. Taeho sat alone in the back, while the Valarian driver refused to look at him. Through the window, he watched ordinary Valarians going about their lives. Families walking together. Children playing in parks filled with flowers that sang when the wind touched them. Old people sitting in cafes, drinking something that steamed with silver vapor. It looked peaceful. But Taeho had learned long ago that peaceful places often hid the worst dangers. The palace rose before him like a mountain made of white stone and glass. Guards stood at every entrance, their ceremonial armor catching the fading sunlight. They carried spears that hummed with energy and swords that could cut through steel like paper. Taeho approached the main gate. A guard stepped forward and blocked his path. State your business, human. I am Kang Taeho. I was hired by the Galactic Mercenary Guild to serve as a bodyguard. The guard looked at him with open disgust. You? A bodyguard? For whom? Princess Yura. The guard laughed. Other guards joined him. The sound echoed off the palace walls like mocking thunder. The princess requested a human specifically, another guard said. She must have lost her mind. What can your kind possibly protect her from? You are small. You are weak. You live such short lives. Taeho said nothing. He had heard these words before on a dozen different worlds. Humans were new to the galactic community. They had only joined 50 years ago, when Earth finally developed faster than light travel. To the older species, humans were like children who had wandered into a room full of adults. The guard finally stepped aside. Go. But do not expect to last long here, little human. Taeho walked through the gate without looking back. Inside the palace, everything was even more beautiful. The floors were made of something that looked like frozen starlight. The walls held paintings that moved and told stories. Servants in white robes hurried past, carrying trays of food and stacks of documents. A young Valarian woman approached him. She wore simple clothes compared to the others, but she carried herself with quiet confidence. You are the human? She asked. I am. Follow me. The princess is waiting. She led him through corridors that twisted and turned like a maze. Taeho memorized every path, every doorway, every window. It was habit. A bodyguard who did not know his surroundings was a dead bodyguard. They stopped before a door carved with images of flowers and birds. She is inside, the woman said. Be respectful. She is kind, but she is still royalty. Taeho nodded and stepped through the door. The room was filled with books, real books made of paper, something rare in a galaxy that had moved beyond such things long ago. Shelves covered every wall from floor to ceiling. In the center of the room, sitting on a cushion with a book in her lap, was Princess Yura. She was younger than Taeho expected, perhaps 20 years old by human standards, though Valarians aged differently. Her silver hair fell past her shoulders like a waterfall of light. Her violet eyes were large and curious, like a child seeing something wonderful for the first time. When she saw Taeho, she smiled. You are him, the human. She stood quickly, and the book fell from her lap. She did not seem to notice. I have read so much about your kind. Is it true that you can run for hours without stopping? Is it true that you heal from wounds that would kill other species? Is it true that you once fought a war on your own planet for 100 years? Taeho blinked. No one had ever greeted him with such enthusiasm. Some of that is true, princess. Some of it is exaggeration. Please. Call me Yura. At least when we are alone. She moved closer to him, studying his face with open fascination. You are smaller than I expected. But your eyes, there is something in your eyes. Something hard, something that has seen much. I was a soldier before I became a mercenary, princess. I have seen war. Yura, she corrected gently. He hesitated. Yura. She smiled again, and it was like watching the sun rise. We are going to be good friends, Kang Taeho. I can feel it. Before Taeho could respond, the door behind him opened. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Yura's smile faded, replaced by something more formal and careful. Taeho turned. A woman stood in the doorway. She was taller than Yura, with the same silver hair but worn in a complex style that framed her face like a crown. Her violet eyes were older, sharper, filled with intelligence and power. She wore a gown of deep purple that flowed around her like living shadow. Queen Seol had arrived. So, the queen said, her voice smooth and cold. This is the human my daughter insisted upon. She walked into the room. Her steps made no sound. She circled Taeho slowly, examining him the way one might examine a horse before purchase. Small, she said. Plain. Nothing remarkable about him at all. Small. Mother, Yura said quietly. He comes highly recommended. The guild says he has never lost a client. The guild says many things. The queen stopped directly in front of Taeho. She was slightly taller than him, and she used that height to look down at him. Tell me, human. Why should I trust my daughter's life to your kind? Taeho met her eyes. He did not look away. He did not bow. Because when I take a job, I finish it. Because I do not know how to quit. Because I will die before I let harm come to someone under my protection. The queen's eyes narrowed. For a long moment, she said nothing. Interesting, she finally said. Most beings would have looked away by now. Most beings would have promised me loyalty and riches and whatever else they thought I wanted to hear. But you just stand there, looking at me like I am ordinary. You are not ordinary, Taeho said, but neither am I. Something flickered in the queen's expression. It might have been surprise. It might have been anger. Or it might have been something else entirely. She turned and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she paused. The diplomatic mission leaves tomorrow morning. Protect my daughter, human. If she is harmed, there will be no corner of this galaxy where you can hide from me. Then she was gone. Yura let out a breath she had been holding. That went better than I expected. Taeho looked at her. That was better? She did not order your execution. So yes. Much better. Yura smiled weakly. Welcome to the Valerian court. Taeho. Try not to die. That night, Taeho lay in his small room near the princess's chambers. Sleep would not come. He kept thinking about the queen's eyes. The way she had looked at him. There had been power there, yes. But also something hungry. Something searching. Through his window, he could see the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, the small blue world where he had been born. It felt very far away now. He closed his eyes and tried to rest. Tomorrow, the mission would begin. And something told him that protecting the princess would be the easy part. The real danger, he suspected, wore a purple gown and sat upon a throne. The diplomatic convoy traveled through space for 3 days before reaching the second planet on their tour. It was a rocky world called Vorn, covered in red deserts and ancient ruins. The Valerian Empire had been trying to bring this world under their control for centuries. The people here were stubborn and proud. Taeho stood beside Princess Yura as their shuttle descended through the dusty atmosphere. She looked nervous. Her hands clasped tightly in her lap. You have done this before? Taeho asked quietly. Many times, but it never gets easier. These people do not want us here. They smile and bow. But I can see the hatred in their eyes. Then why come? Yura sighed. Because my mother believes that if we show kindness enough times, they will eventually accept us. She is patient. She thinks in centuries, not years. The shuttle landed in a courtyard surrounded by crumbling stone walls. Local officials waited to greet them, their faces carefully blank. Behind them stood crowds of ordinary people, watching in silence. Tejo counted 15 Valerian guards in their convoy. They wore beautiful armor and carried expensive weapons. They looked impressive. But as Tejo watched them step off the shuttles, he noticed how they moved. They were stiff, formal. They had trained for parades and ceremonies, not for real combat. He made a mental note. If something went wrong, he could not rely on them. The first day passed without incident. Yura attended meetings with local leaders. She listened to their complaints and promised to bring their concerns to the queen. She was good at this, Tejo realized. She had a way of making people feel heard, even when she could not give them what they wanted. That night, there was a formal dinner. Tejo stood against the wall, while Yura sat at a long table with the planet's governor and his advisors. The food looked strange and smelled worse, but Yura ate it without complaint. A man approached Tejo. He was Valerian, but his clothes were different from the others. More expensive, more carefully chosen. "You are the human bodyguard," the man said. It was not a question. I am Lord Bake. I sit on the Queen's Council. I advise her on matters of military importance." He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "I must say, I was surprised when I heard that a human had been assigned to protect the princess. Surely there were better options. The princess requested me specifically. Yes, she has strange tastes." Lord Bake's eyes moved to Yura, and something dark passed through them. Something possessive. "She is young. She does not understand how the world works, but she will learn." Tejo said nothing. "Tell me, human. What would you do if real danger came? If enemies attacked with weapons and numbers? Would you run? Would you hide? Would you sacrifice the princess to save your own skin?" "I would die before I let harm come to her." Lord Bake laughed softly. "How noble. How foolish. You humans truly are a simple species." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Enjoy your time with the princess while it lasts. Soon, things will change. And when they do, there will be no place for creatures like you." He walked away before Tejo could respond. The second day began with a tour of the planet's ancient temples. Yura seemed excited, her earlier nervousness forgotten as she explored ruins that were older than human civilization. She asked questions constantly, wanting to know everything about the history and culture of this world. Tejo followed her through crumbling hallways and dusty chambers. He watched the shadows. He listened to the silence. Something felt wrong. The air was too still. The local guides were too quiet. They entered a large room filled with broken statues. Yura walked to the center, admiring a massive stone figure that had lost its head centuries ago. "This is beautiful," she said. "Sad, but beautiful. I wonder what it looked like when it was whole." Tejo did not answer. He was looking at the doorways, 3 entrances, no windows, perfect for a trap. "Princess," he said quietly, "we should leave." "What?" "But we just arrived. I want to see more. Now." Something in his voice made her freeze. She turned to look at him, and saw his hand resting on the weapon at his side. "Tejo? What is wrong?" Before he could answer, the attack began. Figures emerged from every doorway. They wore black armor and carried plasma weapons. Their faces were hidden behind masks that glowed with red light. 20 of them. 30. More than Tejo could count quickly. The Valerian guards raised their weapons, but they were too slow. Plasma fire cut through them like lightning through paper. Bodies fell. Screams echoed off the ancient walls. Tejo grabbed Yura and pulled her behind a broken pillar. She was trembling, her eyes wide with terror. "Stay here," he said. "Do not move. Do not make a sound. Tejo, there are too many. We need to run. There is nowhere to run." He drew his weapon. A simple kinetic pistol that the Valerians had mocked him for carrying. "Stay behind me." He stepped out from behind the pillar. The assassins saw him and laughed. One of them spoke through his mask, his voice distorted by electronics. "The human? This is what they sent to protect the princess? Kill him first. Make it quick. 3 assassins raised their weapons. Tejo moved. He had been trained on Earth, in the mountains of his homeland, by masters who had learned from masters before them. He had fought in wars that the galaxy did not know about. He had killed men who thought they could not be killed. He was faster than they expected. His first shot took an assassin in the throat. His second shot hit another in the chest. The third assassin fired. But Tejo was already moving, rolling across the dusty floor, and coming up behind a fallen statue. More assassins came. Tejo kept moving, kept shooting, kept fighting. He did not think about numbers or odds. He thought only about the girl hiding behind the pillar, the girl he had sworn to protect. A plasma blade caught his shoulder. Pain exploded through his body, hot and terrible. He twisted, grabbed the assassin's arm, and broke it with a single motion. The assassin screamed and fell. Tejo took his blade. Now he had 2 weapons. The fight became a blur. Tejo moved through the assassins like water through stones. He was not elegant like the Valerians. He was not graceful. He was brutal and efficient, and completely without mercy. He hit them in places that hurt. He cut them in places that bled. He did not care about honor or fair combat. He cared only about survival. Bodies piled around him. Blood soaked into the ancient floor. The remaining assassins began to hesitate. They had expected easy prey. They had expected a weak human who would die with the first shot. Instead, they found something else. They found a nightmare. "What are you?" one of them screamed. Tejo did not answer. He was too busy killing. When the reinforcements finally arrived, 20 minutes later, they found a scene from a horror story. 32 assassins lay dead or dying on the floor. In the center of the room, covered in blood that was mostly not his own, stood the human. He was wounded. He was exhausted. But he was still standing, and behind him, completely unharmed, was Princess Yura. She emerged from her hiding place with tears streaming down her face. She ran to Tejo and grabbed his arm, the one that was not injured. "You saved me," she whispered. "You saved my life." Tejo looked at her. His vision was starting to blur from blood loss. His legs felt weak, but he managed to smile. "That is my job, princess." Then he collapsed. He woke in a medical bay 3 days later. Valerian doctors had patched his wounds and pumped his body full of healing drugs. He felt weak but alive. Yura was sitting beside his bed, reading a book. When she saw his eyes open, she dropped it immediately. "You are awake. The doctors said you might sleep for another week. They said humans are not supposed to survive injuries like yours. Humans are stubborn," Tejo said. His voice was rough. "We do not like to die." Clearly. She hesitated, then reached out and took his hand. "Tejo, I do not know how to thank you. Those assassins, they were sent to capture me, to force my mother into accepting a political marriage. Lord Bake's men found evidence on their bodies." Lord Bake. Tejo remembered the man's cold smile, his whispered threats. He said nothing. "My mother has summoned you," Yura continued. "When you are well enough to walk, you are to report to the throne room." She watched the security footage of your fight. The princess paused, and something strange entered her voice. She watched it many times. A chill ran down Tejo's spine. But he nodded. "Then I will go to her. As soon as I can stand." 2. Yura squeezed his hand. "Be careful, Tejo. My mother is not like other people. When she wants something, she takes it. And I think—" She stopped, uncertain. "You think what?" "I think she has decided that she wants you." The throne room was empty when Tejo arrived. The guards had let him pass without question, which surprised him. The last time he had walked these halls, they had laughed at him. Now they looked at him with something closer to fear. He walked across the polished floor, his footsteps echoing in the vast silence. The throne sat at the far end, carved from a single piece of white crystal that seemed to glow with inner light. Behind it, massive windows showed the stars of the Valerian Empire stretching into infinity. Queen Seol was not on her throne. She stood by the windows, her back to him, looking out at the darkness between worlds. "You came faster than I expected," she said without turning. "The doctors told me you would need another week to recover. I heal quickly. So I have heard, so I have seen." She finally turned to face him. Her violet eyes moved across his body, studying him like a scientist studying something new and fascinating. "I watched the footage of your battle 17 times. Each time, I noticed something different. The way you moved, the way you adapted, the way you refused to stop even when your body was breaking." She walked toward him, slow and deliberate. Her gown whispered against the floor like a living thing. "My guards trained for 10 years before they were allowed to wear the royal armor. They studied combat techniques passed down through generations. They were the best the Empire had to offer." She stopped directly in front of him, close enough that he could smell the perfume she wore. "Something like flowers and starlight. And you killed more enemies in 20 minutes than all of them combined. They were not prepared for real combat. They were prepared for show. Yes. A weakness I intend to correct." The Queen reached out and touched the place where the plasma blade had cut his shoulder. The wound was healed now, but a scar remained. "No, you are lying. I can see the tension in your jaw." She pressed harder, and Taeho forced himself not to react. "Interesting. You feel pain, but you refuse to show it. Why? Because showing weakness invites attack." The Queen smiled. It was a beautiful smile. But there was something hungry behind it. "You speak like a warrior. But you are more than that. Are you not? You think like a ruler. You see the world in terms of power and weakness, strategy and survival." She withdrew her hand and walked past him, moving toward her throne. But she did not sit. Instead, she turned and leaned against it, watching him. "I have a proposition for you, Kang Taeho. I am promoting you to Royal Guardian. It is a position that has not existed for 300 years. You will answer only to me. You will have authority over all palace security. You will live in the royal wing, close to the throne." Taeho frowned. "Why?" "Because you have proven yourself valuable. Because my daughter clearly trusts you. And because..." She paused, her eyes never leaving his face. "Because I find you interesting. That does not happen often. I am just a human, a mercenary. I do not understand court politics or Valerian traditions." "Exactly. You are different. Everyone in this palace wants something from me. Power, money, influence. They smile and bow and scheme behind my back. But you?" She tilted her head slightly. "You just stood there and told me you would die for my daughter. No promises of loyalty to me. No attempts to impress me. Just simple, honest truth." She descended from the throne platform and approached him again. This time, she stopped even closer than before. "Do you know how long it has been since someone was honest with me? Since someone looked at me and saw a person instead of a crown?" Her voice dropped lower, softer. "My husband died 15 years ago. Since then, I have ruled alone. Every day, I am surrounded by people, but I am always lonely. Always alone." Taeho did not know what to say. He had expected commands and threats. He had not expected vulnerability. "I am not asking you to love me," the Queen continued. "I am not asking you to pretend. I am simply asking you to stay. To talk to me sometimes, to remind me that there is more to life than politics and power." She reached up and touched his face, her fingers cool against his skin. "Can you do that?" Before Taeho could answer, the throne room doors burst open. Lord Bake strode in, his face twisted with anger. "Your Majesty, I must protest this outrage. You cannot promote a human to royal guardian. It goes against every tradition we have." The Queen's expression changed instantly. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by cold authority. She turned to face Lord Bake, with eyes that could freeze fire. "I do not recall asking for your permission, Lord Bake. The council will not accept this. The noble houses will not accept this. This human is a commoner, an outsider, a creature from a primitive species that barely learned to leave their own planet. This human saved my daughter's life when your noble guards failed. This human killed 32 assassins while bleeding from a wound that should have killed him. This human did more in 20 minutes than your entire military career." Lord Bake's face went red. "Your Majesty, be reasonable. There are proper candidates for this position, Valerian candidates, men of noble blood who have served the crown for generations. Like yourself, perhaps?" The Queen's voice was ice. "Tell me, Lord Bake, where were you during the attack on my daughter? Where were your noble friends? Where were your generations of service?" Lord Bake said nothing. "I thought so." The Queen turned back to Tejo. "The promotion stands. You will begin your duties immediately. Guards, escort Lord Bake out. He seems to have forgotten his place." Guards appeared and led the furious lord away. As he passed Tejo, Lord Bake leaned close and whispered, "This is not over, human. I will destroy you." Then he was gone. The Queen sighed and walked back to her throne. This time, she sat down. She suddenly looked tired, older than she had seemed moments before. "You have made an enemy," she said. "Lord Bake is powerful and petty. He will not forget this humiliation. I have survived enemies before. Not like him. He does not fight with weapons. He fights with words, with schemes, with poison in the dark." She looked at him with something almost like concern. "I have put you in danger by promoting you. I want you to understand that." "I understand. And you accept anyway?" Tejo thought about the question. He thought about Princess Yura, her kindness and curiosity. He thought about the Queen, her loneliness hidden behind walls of power. He thought about Lord Bake and his cold smile and his whispered threats. "I accept." The Queen nodded slowly. "Good. Then let us begin." Over the following weeks, Tejo learned what it meant to be royal guardian. He reorganized the palace security. Replacing ceremony with practicality, he trained the guards in real combat techniques, the kind that kept people alive instead of just looking impressive. He walked the halls at night, checking doors and windows, learning every shadow and every corner. And he talked to the Queen. She summoned him often, usually late at night when the palace was quiet. They would sit in her private chambers, drinking tea that tasted like nothing on earth. And she would ask him questions. About humans, about Earth, about his life before he became a mercenary. "Why did you leave your planet?" she asked one night. "Because there was nothing left for me there. My family was gone. My friends were dead. The war took everything. So you became a wanderer, a man without a home." "Yes." She looked at him for a long moment. "I understand that feeling. Even surrounded by all this, I often feel like I belong nowhere." Princess Yura watched these developments with growing concern. She cornered Tejo one morning in the library, her usual smile replaced by worry. "Be careful with my mother," she said quietly. "She is not a bad person, but she is not a good one either. She uses people. It is how she has survived. She seems lonely. She is. But loneliness does not make someone safe. A hungry animal is more dangerous than a full one." Yura took his hand, her grip tight. "I do not want to lose you. Tejo, you are the first person in years who has treated me like a person instead of a princess. You will not lose me. Promise?" He hesitated. In his experience, promises were dangerous things. But looking at her worried face, he found he could not refuse. "I promise." That night, a message arrived at Tejo's quarters. It was written on real paper, in ink that shimmered with gold. "Lord Bake challenges Kang Tejo to formal combat under the ancient laws of our people. The duel will take place in 3 days. If the human refuses, he admits his cowardice and must leave the Valerian Empire forever. If he accepts and loses, the same fate awaits him." Tejo read the message twice. Then he crumpled it in his fist. The game had changed. And the stakes had just become deadly. The arena was ancient. It had been built 10,000 years ago, when the Valerian Empire was young and duels between nobles were common. The stone walls had seen 1,000 deaths. The sand floor had drunk rivers of blood. Tejo stood at one end, looking up at the crowd. 50,000 Valerians filled the seats, their silver faces bright with excitement. They had come to watch a human die. It was entertainment. It was justice. It was proof that their species was still superior to the small, weak creatures from Earth. Lord Bake stood at the other end, surrounded by servants who adjusted his armor and checked his weapons. He looked calm, confident. He had been training for combat since before Tejo was born. A servant approached Tejo and handed him a single blade. It was ceremonial, designed for Valerian hands, longer and heavier than anything he had trained with. "These are the rules," the servant said, not meeting his eyes. "No weapons except the official blades. No outside technology. Fight until one combatant yields or dies. Do you understand?" Tejo took the blade. It felt wrong in his grip, unbalanced. "I understand. Good luck, human." The servant walked away quickly, clearly not wanting to be associated with the dead man walking. Up in the royal box, Queen Seol sat on a throne of gold. Her face was a mask, showing nothing. Beside her sat Princess Yura, who looked like she might be sick. Tejo had visited Yura that morning. She had begged him not to fight. "Lord Bake has killed 40 men in duels," she said, tears running down her face. 40! And those were Valarians, trained warriors who grew up with blades in their hands. "You have never even held a ceremonial sword. I have fought before. Not like this. This is not a battle. This is murder dressed up in tradition." She grabbed his arms, shaking him. "Please. Just leave. Go back to Earth. I will find another way to deal with Lord Bake." Tejo had gently removed her hands. "If I leave, he wins. And if he wins, he will come for you next. He wants to control this empire, and you are the key. I will not let that happen." "Why? Why do you care so much?" He had thought about the question for a long moment before answering. "Because you treated me like a person when everyone else treated me like dirt. Because you smiled at me when everyone else sneered. Because you are good, Yura. And good people are rare in this galaxy. They deserve protection." Now, standing in the arena with the wrong weapon in his hands, and 50,000 hostile eyes watching, Tejo wondered if he had made a mistake. But it was too late for doubt. It was too late for anything except fighting. A horn sounded. The crowd fell silent. Lord Bake walked forward, his blade gleaming in the artificial light. He moved with the grace of a predator, each step precise and controlled. "I want you to know," he said, his voice carrying across the arena, "that this brings me no pleasure. You are simply in my way. When you are dead, I will comfort the princess in her grief. I will help her understand that humans cannot be trusted. And in time, she will see that I am the only one who can protect her." "Then Hive." Tejo said nothing. He raised his blade and waited. Lord Bake attacked. The first strike was fast, faster than anything Tejo had expected. He barely managed to deflect it, and the force of the blow sent pain shooting up his arm. The second strike came immediately after, then the third. Tejo retreated, blocking and dodging, trying to find his balance. The crowd cheered every time Lord Bake's blade came close to hitting him. "You are slow," Lord Bake said, almost conversationally. "Clumsy. Your form is terrible. Did they teach you nothing on your little planet?" He attacked again, a complicated series of moves that Tejo could barely follow. A cut opened on Tejo's arm, then another on his leg, then a shallow gash across his chest. Blood dripped onto the sand. The crowd roared with approval. In the royal box, Yura covered her face with her hands. She could not watch. But Queen Seol leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the human below. She was not watching a death. She was studying a battle. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Lord Bake continued his assault. landing cut after cut. Taeho was covered in wounds now, his borrowed armor hanging in pieces. He should have fallen. He should have surrendered. Any reasonable person would have. But Taeho was not surrendering. And he was not falling. Lord Bake's attacks began to slow. Sweat appeared on his silver skin. His breathing grew heavier. He had expected a quick victory. And the human was denying him that. "Why will you not die?" he hissed. Taeho smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "We evolved to chase our prey across continents," he said. "We would follow animals for days, waiting for them to tire. We never needed to be faster or stronger. We just needed to outlast them." He stepped forward for the first time. Lord Bake swung at him. But the attack was slower now. Predictable. Taeho slipped past it and struck. His blade cut across Lord Bake's arm. Drawing first blood, the crowd gasped. "What?" Lord Bake stared at his wound in disbelief. "How did you?" Taeho attacked again. And again. He was not elegant. He was not graceful. But he was relentless. Every time, Lord Bake tried to catch his breath, Taeho was there. Every time Lord Bake tried to retreat, Taeho followed. The hunter had become the hunted. 20 minutes into the duel, Lord Bake was desperate. He swung wildly, abandoning technique for raw power. It was a mistake. Taeho caught the blade with his own, twisted, and sent it flying across the arena. Lord Bake fell to his knees, unarmed. Taeho placed the edge of his blade against the noble's throat. "Yield," he said. "I am a lord of the Valerian Empire. I do not yield to animals." Taeho pressed the blade harder. A thin line of blood appeared on Lord Bake's silver skin. "Yield, or die. Your choice." The arena was completely silent. 50,000 Valerians held their breath, waiting. Lord Bake's face twisted with hatred. But he was a survivor above all else. And dead men cannot scheme. "I yield," he whispered. The horn sounded again, signaling the end of the duel. And then, something happened that had not happened in 300 years. Queen Seol stood and applauded. The sound echoed through the arena, sharp and clear. For a moment, no one else moved. A monarch applauding a commoner was unthinkable. It simply did not happen. But Queen Seol kept applauding. And slowly, uncertainly, others began to join her. The applause spread through the crowd like a wave, building until it became a roar. Taeho stood in the center of the arena, bleeding from a dozen wounds, and listened to 50,000 Valerians cheer for him. It was the strangest moment of his life. That night, after the doctors had treated his injuries, and the court had finished their endless congratulations, Taeho returned to his quarters. He wanted nothing more than to sleep for a week, but someone was waiting for him. Queen Seol sat in his chair, dressed in simple robes instead of her usual formal gown. Without her crown and ceremonial clothes, she looked almost ordinary, almost human. "You should not be here," Taeho said. "I am the queen. I can be anywhere I want." She stood and walked toward him. "I watched you fight today. I have watched many duels in my life, but never one like that. I was losing for most of it." "No. You were waiting. Learning. Letting him exhaust himself while you figured out his weaknesses. It was brilliant." She stopped in front of him, close enough to touch, and terrifying. "You let yourself be cut again and again, never knowing if the next wound would be fatal. That takes a kind of courage I have rarely seen. Or stupidity, perhaps." She reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "I have watched 1,000 warriors, Taeho. Generals who conquered worlds, champions who never lost a single duel. But none of them have moved me the way you do." Her eyes were intense, searching his face for something he could not identify. "I want you at my side," she said. "Not as a guard. Not as a servant. As something more. As an equal." Taeho's heart beat faster, but not entirely from attraction. There was danger here, hidden beneath the desire. The queen was offering him everything. And that made him suspicious. "What about your daughter?" Yura will be fine. She is young. She will find her own path. She trusts me to protect her. And you will. As royal guardian, her safety is your responsibility. Nothing would change except your position at court. The queen moved closer, her body almost touching his. I can give you power beyond anything you have imagined. Wealth that would make your entire planet jealous. A place at the center of the greatest empire in the galaxy. She leaned up and pressed her lips against his, soft and warm and demanding. For a moment, Tejo let himself feel it. The attraction. The temptation. The promise of something he had never allowed himself to want. Then he gently pushed her away. I need time, he said. This is not a decision I can make in a single night. The queen's expression flickered. Surprise, perhaps. Or disappointment. But she recovered quickly, her face smoothing into its usual calm mask. Of course. Take whatever time you need. She walked past him toward the door. At the threshold, she paused. But do not take too long. Tejo, I am not a patient woman, and there are many who would kill for the opportunity I am offering you. Then she was gone. Tejo sat down heavily on his bed. His wounds ached. His head spun. He had survived the duel, but somehow, he felt like the real battle was just beginning, and he was not sure he could win this one. The scandal began 3 days after the duel. Tejo was eating breakfast in his quarters when Princess Yura burst through the door. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. She looked like someone had struck her. Did you know? She demanded. Know what? She threw a tablet at him. He caught it and looked at the screen. It showed a document. Official palace records with the royal seal. As he read, his stomach turned to ice. The assassination attempt on Yura had been planned from inside the palace. The assassins had been given the convoy's route. They had been told exactly where the princess would be and when, and the person who had given them this information was someone with access to the highest levels of security, someone like the Queen. Lord Bake released these records this morning, Yura said, her voice breaking. He found evidence in the assassin's communications. My mother knew about the attack. She let it happen. She used me as bait to test you. Tejo read the documents again, looking for any sign that they were fake. But the codes were real. The signatures were real. Everything pointed to one terrible truth. The Queen had risked her own daughter's life to test a human bodyguard. I do not understand, Yura whispered. She sank into a chair, all the strength leaving her body. Why would she do this? I am her daughter. I am her blood. How could she gamble with my life like it meant nothing? Tejo had no answer. He thought about his conversations with the Queen, her questions about human loyalty, her fascination with his willingness to die for someone he barely knew. She had been testing him all along. Every word, every gesture, every moment of vulnerability had been calculated. He felt like a fool. The palace erupted into chaos. Lords and ladies demanded explanations. The Queen's Council called emergency meetings. Rumors spread through the court like fire through dry grass. Some said the Queen had gone mad. Others said Lord Bake had forged the documents to destroy her. Nobody knew what to believe, but Tejo knew. He had seen the truth in the Queen's eyes the first time they met. She was not mad. She was simply willing to do anything. Sacrifice anything. To get what she wanted, and what she wanted was him. He found the Queen in the throne room, standing before a crowd of angry nobles. She faced their accusations with perfect calm, neither admitting nor denying anything. Your Majesty, one noble shouted. How do you explain these documents? How do you explain risking the princess's life? I explain nothing, the Queen replied. I am the sovereign of this empire. I do not answer to you. Even sovereigns must answer for their crimes. Crime? The Queen's voice turned cold. I protected this empire. I found a guardian worthy of protecting my bloodline. The princess was never in real danger. The human would never have let her be harmed. You could not know that, but I did know. That is the difference between rulers and subjects. We see what others cannot. Tejo stepped forward. The crowd parted around him, whispering and pointing. The queen saw him and smiled. It was the smile of someone who had won. "Ah, Teho. Perfect timing. Tell them. Tell them how you killed 32 assassins to protect my daughter. Tell them how I was right to trust you." Teho looked at her. He saw her beauty, her power, her intelligence. He saw everything she had offered him, and he saw, beneath it all, a woman so consumed by control that she had forgotten how to love. "You used your own daughter as bait," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the silent room. "You let her believe she might die. You let her feel terror and helplessness and despair. All to test me." The queen's smile faltered slightly. "I did what was necessary." "Necessary for what? For the Empire? For your bloodline?" Teho stepped closer. "Or for yourself? Because you were lonely. Because you wanted something new and interesting. Because you saw me as a toy to be acquired. That is not true. Is it not? You offered me power and wealth. You offered me a place at your side. But you never offered me honesty. You never offered me trust." He shook his head. "That is not strength, Your Majesty. That is fear. You are so afraid of losing control that you control everything, even the people you claim to love." The queen's face went pale. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever dared. "How dare you?" she whispered. "I am the queen. I have ruled this empire for 30 years. I have crushed rebellions and conquered worlds. I will not be lectured by a human who has been here for barely a month. Then punish me, execute me, throw me in prison." Teho spread his arms. "I will not fight back. But I will not pretend that what you did was right, and I will not let you pretend either." Silence filled the throne room. The nobles watched, frozen, unable to believe what they were witnessing. The queen stared at Teho. Her hands trembled slightly. Something cracked in her expression. Not anger, not hatred. Something deeper and more painful. Grief. "You do not understand," she said, and for the first time, her voice sounded small. "When my husband died, I had no one. Everyone wanted something from me. Everyone saw me as a means to an end. I learned to trust no one because everyone betrayed me. Yura never betrayed you. Yura is naive. She does not see the threats around her. She does not understand how dangerous this court is." Tears appeared in the queen's eyes. The first tears anyone had seen from her in 15 years. "I was trying to protect her. I needed to know that someone could keep her safe when I am gone. Then you should have asked her, trusted her, treated her like a daughter instead of a chess piece." Teho's voice softened. "You can still fix this. It is not too late." Princess Yura appeared at the throne room entrance. She had been listening. Tears streamed down her face. But there was something else in her eyes. Not hatred. Not disgust. Hope. "Mother," she said, stepping forward. "Is it true? Were you really trying to protect me?" The queen looked at her daughter. For a long moment, she did not speak. Then, slowly, she descended from the throne platform. She walked across the floor, past the silent nobles, until she stood before Yura. "I am sorry," she said. The words seemed to cost her everything. "I thought I knew best. I thought I had to control everything to keep you safe. But I was wrong. I nearly lost you because I was too afraid to lose you." Yura stared at her mother. Then, without warning, she threw her arms around her. The queen stood rigid for a moment, shocked by the embrace. Then her arms came up, and she held her daughter tight. The nobles watched in stunned silence. Some looked uncomfortable, others looked moved. But Teho simply watched, feeling something warm and unfamiliar in his chest. It was hope. The investigation into Lord Bake revealed more than anyone expected. He had not simply found the evidence against the queen. He had helped create the assassination attempt. He had worked with the rebels, feeding them information, hoping that either the princess would be captured or the queen would be exposed. Either outcome would have helped him seize power. His lands were seized. His titles were stripped. He was exiled to a frozen moon at the edge of the galaxy. where he would spend the rest of his very long life alone. The queen announced reforms. She would create a council that included her daughter. She would listen to advisors instead of ruling alone. She would try to be better. Whether she would succeed, only time would tell. As for Tejo, he received a new title. Not consort. Not lover. Something that had never existed before. Lord Protector of the Crown. He would guard the royal family, mother and daughter both. He would stand between them and their enemies. And he would remind them, when necessary, that power without love was just another kind of prison. On his last night before officially accepting the position, Tejo stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city. The twin suns had set, and the stars were coming out. Millions of lights scattered across the darkness. Yura found him there. "You could have left," she said, standing beside him. "After everything that happened, no one would have blamed you. Why did you stay?" Tejo thought about the question. He thought about Earth, so far away now. He thought about the wars he had fought, the people he had lost, the life he had left behind. "Because you asked me to promise," he said finally. "And humans keep their promises." Yura smiled. It was the same smile she had given him the first day they met, full of warmth and curiosity and light. "Thank you, Tejo, for everything. Thank you for treating me like a person." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Behind them, the palace continued its endless dance of politics and power. The queen struggled with her demons. The nobles schemed and plotted. The galaxy turned, indifferent to the small dramas of any single world. But on that balcony, in that moment, none of that mattered. A human and a princess stood side by side, looking at the future. And for the first time in a very long time, Tejo felt like he had found something he had lost long ago. A home. Word spread quickly through the galaxy. On a dozen worlds, in 100 languages, beings told the story of the human who had saved a princess, defied a queen, and found his place among the stars. Some said he was a legend, some said he was a fool. But everyone agreed on one thing: you did not want to threaten the Valerian throne, because if you did, you would face the human who could not be broken, and he would never stop coming.